So we are going to be going through modeling and texturing an ammo item for WolverineSoft Project Blue. So here are some of our reference pictures here. I've gotten a lot of them here. I've decided that we're going to be making the different ammo pickups, different potions, and distinguish them both by type and by a symbol on a label on the bottle. And I decided to do that just so that way colorblind players will be able to distinguish between the different types of bottles. So here I have some references. These ones up here are more representational types of bottles. This one here is like a mushroom, and this might be something that would go for the healing item. We just thought that would be kind of fun. Here we've got this bottle that I don't really know what this looks like, but it has these wings on it. This one has a skull, things like that. Like the elements on the bottle directly relate to what effect it might have. These ones here I have as reference because of the very interesting silhouettes and shape of the bottle. Immediately lets you know that these are different types of bottle. Like you can see, oh, this one's gonna do whatever, or oh, that's that, that's that. There's no mistaking any of these bottles from any of the others. So that's kind of thing that I kind of wanted to capture, and so that was kind of my inspiration for a lot of the references here. So I have different sections here. These are ones that are a mix between like a triangle and a square, really. So they're pretty bulky, but they're also pointy in spots. These are references for potions that have different labels. So here we have one where the label's directly on the bottle. These all have different types of labels tied as strings, or tied to strings wrapped around the bottle, and that might be the design that we go for. I'm unsure. I think it might be a bit more interesting, but visually. But I could see this design being a lot easier to read at a distance and from multiple angles. So that probably will be what we end up going with. So up here we have some triangular potions. These ones are more round, and these are square ones. And I decided that for our first weapon here, for the ammo type, we are going to be using our squared potions. So I'm going to just scale my reference images down a little bit. And I'm going to keep them in the corner of my screen while I work, so I don't lose sight of what it is that I'm trying to make. All right, so here we have a finished ammo pickup model. And now we are going to go through the process of actually texturing this. So I've already went ahead and UV unwrapped or properly added seams in order to be able to UV unwrap this mesh. But I'll walk you through the process of how we'll actually do this here in a minute. So this is sort of what our finalized product will be. And the idea here is to unwrap this mesh and lay it out so that we can portray this 3D object in 2D space so that we can create our textures for it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove the seams. So I'm going to press Control E and then clear seams. And let me just make sure that my screencast keys are working. Okay, cool. So, okay. Cool. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to, in edit mode, I'm going to go up to the top left over here. I'm going to go to edge select, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to block out the different sections of this mesh that should be separated into different objects for UV unwrapping. So one section that I want here is this beveled portion on the top of the potion here. So I'm going to hold Alt and right click or left click, whichever is select for you. And that'll select the loop around the outside. I'm going to do that on the bottom as well, but that didn't work. So I'm going to hold Alt and click on each side, and that'll select like the side of it. And then also I'm going to want to nab these different corners here so that we can paint each of the different faces. Then now that I have this selection here, I'm going to go and I'm going to press Control E and then select Mark Seam. And then I'll go ahead and add these red lines to the mesh, and that means that there is a seam there for UV unwrapping. So now I'm going to make each different side of this bevel its own, have its own seam. So I'm going to go ahead and select these. Okay, and then if I press Control E, Mark Seam again. Okay, now we have another seam. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add seams going all the way around the base of the neck of the bottle here. Press Control E and Mark Seam again. And then now I can hold Alt and that'll select that ring there. Alt and click like I did before. And then Control E, Mark Seam. And I'm going to do this on the lip of the bottle here as well. Control E, Mark Seam. Control E, oh, that's not what I wanted. Control E, Mark Seam. Control E, Mark Seam, and then we'll do it at the top of this bottle here. And you got to be careful. Make sure that you're checking that you have all of the right edges selected. Sometimes Alt doesn't always work. You have to select others manually by hand. Okay, so this is pretty good. So let's go ahead and try and unwrap this now, and we'll see what happens. So if I do UV unwrap, we see that I've got these weird circular type objects here. If I can make this window a little bit bigger, we can see that I have these circular islands here. And this isn't really something that we want in our textures, just because then I'd have to be painting in a weird circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to specify one side of this that we would like to be, we would want everything to unwrap from. Actually, I think I know what's happening. So I think, yes, yeah, no, that's right. Okay, we're just going to go up the center of the neck bottle here, and we're going to press Control E, Mark Seam, and then unwrap all of those. We see we've still got something over here. And if we're wondering, oh, well, what might this be? Well, we can try and look at our mesh and figure it out, but that's not really giving us much information. So what I'm going to do here is
UV sync selection, there. Now when we select something in our UV editor, it'll also select the same thing in the inspector. So if we go and we click on these, you can see it appears to be this face up here that is not being unwrapped in the way that we want. So we can try and add another seam here and see if that'll fix things up. So I'm gonna just select one of these edges here and press mark seam again. And you know what? Actually, now that I'm thinking of it, the lip probably being the same, and I'm imagining that's down here. Well, that's probably fine enough. So I think we'll probably call this good on UV unwrapping the mesh. So now, just select everything, UV unwrap. We'll notice that a lot of these faces are very close together, and that's not something that we're going to want to do for later when we're actually texturing this in Illustrator. That's going to be difficult. So I'm going to go over here into the bottom left of the viewport. I'm going to go to margin. I'm going to increase this a little bit, and that'll increase the spacing between the different portions here. All right. I'm actually going to make a new image because this is called normal and maybe a little bit small. Well, no, I think 1024 is probably okay. Okay, so let's name this ammo hiccup. Okay. Well, I'm probably not going to actually use this, but the image that I just created. But what we're going to do now, in order to begin actually texturing this in Illustrator, we're going to go out to UV, and we're going to do export UV layout, and I'm going to put this in my documents folder. Here, let me create a new folder for us. I'll just call this texturing tutorial. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to export my UV layout. Now I'm going to navigate back over to Illustrator, and I have a file open at the moment. This is the texture file for the different weapon pickups that are in the game at the moment. And I decided that each spell should have its own iconography to kind of show what the spell is supposed to be. So the tri-shot has these 3 rays shooting out. The multi-shot has this interesting spinning symbol, and the large, powerful shot has this large symbol here. And my idea here is, in order to have the ammos obviously match up easily with the different spells, we're going to reuse those symbols on the ammo items as well. So actually, I'm realizing now that the way that we did that model, only the bottle itself has been a UV text or UV unwrapped. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to combine some of these objects that I have here, just because. Well, one, I'm going to make meshes out of these because at the moment these are curves. If I go into edit mode, they're curves and not polygonal meshes. So I'm going to go object convert to mesh from curve. Okay, and then I'm going to do. I should probably do a Boolean, but for time's sake here, I'm just going to do Control J with all of them selected, and that'll join them all into one object. And then if I, that's interesting. Do Smart UV Project, probably. You know, this actually might work okay, because I'm imagining we're probably going to have just one repeated texture throughout, and it probably won't be too wonky if we have it look like this. Well, we can try adding a UV unwrap to this. Just know that this is a bit more complicated than what we were doing before, and I'm unsure if this will work. So if I'm gonna do mark seam here, and okay, so that worked for that. Okay. So I'm going to clear those seams actually. I see now that doing the innermost ring gives us much better results. Control E, mark seam. That's pretty good. Then we'll go back into our see-through mode and we'll select this ring like we had before and we'll Control E, mark seam. And there we have much better strings. So now they're all, we could easily texture these in Illustrator. Cool, so that worked a lot better than I thought it would. So now we're gonna try to do something similar with this string. I am unsure if this will work or not. Okay, that worked a lot better than I would have expected it to. Some of these UVs are a little wonky, but I think we're just gonna leave it for now. It's probably fine. So I might scale this out in the X direction because that's probably gonna be more important to this texture. Okay, and then I'm going to export this. It's another UV, and these can just be 3 different materials. That's, can they? You know what? We'll actually try and combine these all into one mesh and see how that works. Okay, make sure. Okay, so that's much better. So now we have our label over here. We have our different strings in these sections, and I am a little bit worried. We'll see if this is enough space for them. We might have to change our image a little and make these larger. But for now, we're going to move ahead with that. Okay, so one thing that we might notice is that some of these faces are kind of gray, and what that means is that the normal is facing the wrong way. And what the normal is sort of the direction that the face is pointing. Like, is this face pointing to the inside or to the outside? And that's just something you need to fix because in Unity, those faces will be see-through. So I'm going to select all of the faces, pressing A, and then I'm going to do space and do recalculate normals. So inside. Unclear if that worked or not. We might have to flip some of them by hand later, but all right, pretty cool. So now that we have this new UV layout, we're probably going to have to export that again. So I'm going to go to UV, export layout, texturing tutorial, and we'll call this UV store layout. Okay, and I'll export my UV layout. Then I'll go back over to Illustrator. I'm going to do File, New, and I'm going to do 2000 by 2000 pixels is good for me. And then I'm going to bring in that image that we got. So I'm going to do File, Place, and we'll go to Documents. Then I'm going to go to Texturing Tutorial, and I'm going to bring in that UV layout. Okay. This is a little small, but that's okay. Now I'm going to scale that up so that it fits. And actually, before we get too much further, I just remembered sort of one of our rules with making textures is that you want your texture size to be a power of 2. So rather than 2000 by 2000, we're going to do 2048 by 2048. And create that. Because I have this image here, I'll just copy this, bring them over. Okay, much better. Cool. So now that we have our image in here, what are we going to do with it? Well, first I'm going to go to the window option here, and I'm going to go down to image trace. And what this will do is Illustrator will trace out these images, or these different sections of the image. So I'm going to do preview just with the default. You can see this is kind of okay. What I want to get here is I want to get just the basic outline. I don't want any gaps between anything. So I'm going to tweak my settings a bit. I'm gonna turn up my threshold a little. See, that helped quite a bit. If I turn it up enough, here we see that the entire shape has been filled in. And this is really what I want. This is probably pretty good. I can try and bring it back a little. Play with it some. No, actually, nope. Not all the way. Bringing it up almost as high as it goes is pretty good. And then I'm going to do advanced paths. I'm going to turn those up just so we got these sharp edges here, which is what we want. I'm going to turn down the noise. And let's turn up our corners even more. Oops, maybe if I do. No. Okay. This is probably about what we want. Okay, so now I'm going to do trace. Okay, and nothing really happened. So what we have to do now that we've traced the image is that we have to go Object, Expand, and press OK. And now it's actually made Illustrator objects out of these different shapes. So now I can easily recolor all of these. So let's get started here. So I believe these, and I can go, here, I will split my view so that I have Illustrator on this side of my screen and Blender on this side. And I probably don't need my reference too much here. I can probably get away with putting it away. I'll look back at it when I start to actually create the materials, but for now, we're just gonna eyeball what the colors should be. Okay, so I'm going to, okay, so now that we have this all set up, I'm going to try and figure out which different sections of this relate to what. I'm going to select, I want to get the cork done first. So I'm going to select the different vertices. Well, I'll select the faces of the cork so that I can see exactly only what I need to see. So if I go over to Illustrator, I press the H key to move around. Oh, H in Illustrators to move around, but in Blender it hides things. So I'm going to go back over to Blender and hit Alt H. Okay, so now I can see that this is what my cork looks like. So really quickly, I'm going to pull up some reference images of what does a cork look like. So I'll probably do cork. Just go to Google Images. Okay, get the idea. And I'll bring this back into Pure Ref. And then also I'll look at what a cartoon cork looks like. These are gonna get me some weird results. I usually use Pinterest because it's more likely to get me good looking cartoony or fantasy, more stylized images than if I were on Google Images. So we'll try cartoon cork here. And see if we get anything. You know, this is even worse, so I will eat my words. Okay. Really, we could probably just look at our reference images from our other bottles, and that's probably fine enough. So I kind of get the idea of what this texture is supposed to be, a bit of pock marks in it and such. So we just verify. Yep. Okay, so that is the texture. So one thing that I might do in Illustrator to make this a bit easier for myself, at least for texturing some of these things, it might be difficult for me to fill this up with a bunch of circles by itself and then also do that for this over here. So I'm going to try and make a pattern for this, and we'll see whether or not this goes good. So what a pattern is basically like a texture for these 2D objects. I'm going to start off here and let's try and figure out what color we want for our cork. So I'm going to go for something a bit lighter. There. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So I don't know what happened there. Sometimes Illustrator has a thing where if you make a black or a white image, it won't let you make it color until you go over to the swatches tab and you pick an actual color. So that's what I just did there. Okay, I'm going to try and play around with this a little and sort of figure out what color I might want. Okay, that's probably pretty good. And now I will go and right-click on the rectangle tool to get the ellipse tool out, and then I'm going to change my color to be good bit darker. And when you go darker, don't just change your color, also change your hue a little. So I'm gonna make this, make it a little bit redder. Okay. So let's just, did I happen to make something that's almost the exact same? Is it the same color? Weird. Okay. And what just happened there?
There. I'm gonna hold shift while I make these circles. And I'll just kind of keep them. I'm going to make sure though that I'm varying the different shapes. And also I want to make sure if I have any that go off one side, they have to go off the other as well. So we'll see that when I go to the actual pattern tool in a minute, how that workflow works. Okay, so I'll play around with the spacing of some of these a bit, try and be a bit more visually pleasing. There, I think that's a pretty okay cork pattern. So now I'm going to do, select everything. I'm going to do File, Pattern, Make, click OK. This will loop these different images. And now if you see here, these circles are sort of loading our pattern a little bit here. So I'm going to select them all. And then I'm going to go Window, and I'm going to open up the Pathfinder. Actually, at the moment, we don't need Blender open, so I'm going to full screen this. And I'm going to click on this bottom left divide option here. And that'll split these circles off, so I can go ahead and go through and delete them. And if I select the square, and I hold Control and then the brackets keys, should be able to move it back in space. Okay. So let's. Okay. Well, instead of doing that inside of the pattern maker, I'll just do that again out here. Okay. So go through and delete these different sections. Select this. Move it back in space. Cool. All right. Now I'm going to select these, and I will now do the pattern. So I'll go Object, Pattern, Make. Okay. Okay. We can see I almost got things lined up here, but they are a little bit off. Just like this, and I'll bring this guy on over. That's about it. Good enough for us. And I'll fix that hole there in a minute. And then we want over here, we want this to, which I don't, anything yet. So I'll just copy this, bring it over top of itself, and then I'll hold O and Shift and drag my mouse, and that'll let me pivot it around itself. There we go. Okay, so our last thing to do is just fix up this gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit A to select an individual point, and I'm going to select this bottom point, and I'm just going to delete that. Okay, and then if we okay, I think that's probably good enough for our pattern. So now that we have our pattern made, it should have been added to our swatches, and we should be able to drag it on here. Now, if we see it's a bit too large for what we want, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna go scale, transform patterns. We'll turn off transform objects. Oh, I see. Do I have to do this by hand? Let's see, we'll do 40% of what it is. Review it. Okay, that's pretty good probably. So I'm gonna press OK on that. And we're gonna go up here. I'm gonna apply, the same texture probably works okay. So we'll do that here as well. So I'm gonna go back to my swatches tab, grab my cork, and bring him over. It's much too large. So once again, we will go to our scale tool, double click, preview scaling. Oh, I don't have the object selected. Okay, make sure you have the object selected and then go into the scale tool. And yeah, that's about what we want. So I think these faces might be a lot different in size, so this might look weird in Blender. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll do export for screens, and I'm going to change the location here. I'm going to go over to the to documents and back to where I have saved the rest of my files. Okay, and then I'll export there. Okay, we go to this 1x. Let's see, we now have bottle text. Okay, so now I'm going to open up Blender again. I'll make this full screen. And we are now going to go to the shading layout. So I'm going to go over here, and as you can see, we don't have any texture at the moment. On our bottle. So what I'm going to do here, if you were to have a material, it would probably look like this. So I'm going to do Shift A. I'm going to search for I'm going to search for an image texture. Cool. And I'm going to drag color over to base color. And I'm going to do open. And go back to my documents. Go back to my texture tutorial. There we go. 1x and my bottle texture. Okay, and look at that. We already have our texture in. Now, if we want to make this look a bit nicer, as we can see, this is pretty flat colors at the moment. So if we were to bring this up another level, I might add some fake ambient occlusion by adding just a gradient around the base. And I'll go what that might look like if we were to do that process. So I'm going to select this shape here that we put the cork on. I'm going to press Control-C and then Control-Shift-V to paste it again in place. And I'm going to change the material. I'm going to change it to a gradient like this. And this gradient is probably fine enough. I'm not going to worry about using a custom gradient or anything. So now we are going to double click here to change our color. I'm going to do, probably we can do like a dark brown. Yeah, that's what our shadow will be. And on this side, we'll do the same color, that dark brown. Then I'll go over to the Properties tab, and with this side selected, I'll change my opacity, and I'm going to bring this down to 0. And now we see we have this nice gradient going across. But this is a bit too much, so I'm going to bring it back here so it's only affecting the bottom portion of this bottle. And now that I'm looking at this might be a little bit wonky actually. So here, let's try and go back over to our gradient, and we'll go over to the right here. We'll try and make this a red. I hate to say it, but we might have to use the custom gradient type, which is annoying to use, but I can still learn how to use it. So the custom gradient tool lets us define points for where we want our different colors to be. I don't like it because it's a lot less uniform than what we were using before. I wish I could define like a curve for the normal to just follow along. But anyways, so I'm going to select these points that I added on the left here, and we're going to go back over to our swatches tab, and I'm going to do that brown again, and then undo that, and then we'll select these on this side, do the brown again, and then go back to properties and change our opacity once again down to 0. So move these. So I just added another image or another point for my gradient here, but it was a bit much. If we see, I have to add. We'll have to kind of play around with that to get it to look as uniform as we want it to look, but this might be okay. So I'm going to try and export this again, and we'll see how this looks. Okay, so I do export for screens, export my bottle texture again, and I'll just replace the same image. Then I'll tab on over to Blender again, and I'll hit the Open Image tab here, and this should open up this same directory again. And we see now we applied this effect to the wrong side. So it's on the top here, we want it on the bottom. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back over to Illustrator. And we're going to go back to our gradient. We're going to select our object again, go back to our gradient. And we will select this side again and move the points back over. I misclicked, got to do it again. Okay, so we'll go back over to our swatches and we'll select, we'll go back over to our opacity and we'll turn that back up to 1 on this side. Now we'll come back over here. And we'll turn this side back to 0. Bring them closer together. And I might even play around with spacing these a bit. Bring them a bit closer. Edge. So that's not as dramatic as it was. Okay, that's probably good. So we're going to now try and export this again. We'll do File, Export for Screens, Export, Replace, come back over. And this is a lot of what our workflow is going to be like. It's going to be going back and forth and seeing what happens with our little tweaks. So now we see we have a nice little ambient occlusion type shadow around our bottle cap, or our cork. Pretty nice. So now we're going to move on to, let's try that string that I said would probably be pretty difficult. So what I'm going to do for that, I believe that was this shape, this shape, this shape, and this shape. We'll actually try and make another pattern, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to just make something that's a rough approximation of what those look like. I'm going to use my pen tool here with a key. I'm just going to free draw some sort of notches. My idea here is I'm trying to make a rope with notches in it. Okay, probably scale what I have down a bit. Duplicate one of these. Oops. Down. Duplicate this one and then bring it down. Let's try and rotate this. Points. Here. Now let's actually set our colors. So for just comparison, I'm going to see what it looks like if it's set a color to the cork. I usually try and limit the number of colors that I'm using, and looking at my references here, these seem to be pretty similar in value between the cork and the string here. So we'll just try and see how that looks for us. And some of these might be a bit too wide, actually. So that. Okay. And now I'll do the same thing that I did before, where I'm going to cut off the ones that are at the edges. Everything is at the edge this time, so I just selected all of these objects. I'm just going to go through one at a time, and we'll delete all of the overhang. Okay, then select all of this. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, let's do these. The twine should be at an angle and not straight on like it is at the moment. So I'm going to undo everything that I did there. I'm going to select these and rotate them. That is not what I meant. Rotate them all so that they're at an angle. And I'm going to delete this one. Okay, cool. Same thing. Let's cut these boys off. Select everything. I could probably just do a drag select and another drag select. Cool. Much quicker. Okay. So now I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to do object, pattern, make. Okay. As we see, we're not worrying about the way that this pattern looks horizontally, because this is just going to be a string, so we're not going to worry about that. But let's try and get the spacing on some of these a little bit better. Looks like we have a bit too much of a gap, and probably what I'll want to do here is take one of these and drag it. Ooh, no. There. Now I can freely move around my different pieces and not have to worry. Messing anything up. I'm just trying to get this to look a bit better than what it does. Probably should have rotated these all at the same amount. This is probably good enough. Okay, I'm going to click done, and now we're going to drag that pattern that we just created onto our different objects. Okay, so this is probably much too large for what we want. So once again, I'm going to select everything. I'm going to double click on my scale tool. Click and transform just the. Okay, accidentally there. just the patterns. Oh. Everything. Double click. Transform. Just the patterns. Horizontal. We're going to keep that at 1. Oh, sorry, 100%. And vertical, we're going to try, let's see how 40 looks. Okay, so I'm going to try this one object at a time there. I'm not sure if Illustrator was messing up. Yes, that seems much better. Okay, so yeah, I think that'll probably be good for what we want. I'm going to do 100 here for the width. Okay, and let's just go through our objects one at a time. Set these up. Okay, I'm going to see there is a way for us to just move our pattern. Or actually, you know what? We can probably get around this by just scaling it horizontally. So let's try 120. Okay, maybe not. Oh, sorry. They probably, because we already scaled it vertically, is what? Way too much. So 100, and we'll try 110 for horizontal. Okay, off 120. Okay, almost about 140%. Okay, cool. And now we don't have any repeats or awful seams on the side there. So now I'm going to go through and just do this for the other objects. Okay, cool. So now let's do the same thing that we did before and export this texture and see how it looks. All right, look at that. We have a nice twine rope. Cool. So we're now going to move on to, let's do the label. That'll probably be the easiest. Okay, so I am going to go back over to this that I had before, just because I wanted this symbol to be repeated there. So I'm going to select this object and go back over here. I'm just going to do Control V, scale it down, spin it over, rotate it 90 degrees. Cool. Maybe scale it just a smidge more. Okay, I think that'll read pretty well. So now I'm just, I'm not going to worry about doing a pattern for this because this texture isn't being reused anywhere else, so it's no big deal. Okay, so now I will go ahead and I guess we can probably just change the color on this one. See if that's good enough. Oh, right. We need to select a color in our swatches so we can actually use color. Then come back over here. That's much too yellow. So I'm going to look back over at my references here. These ones for the labels. These are much, much darker. Right. And I also see this has some artificial tears at the bottom here, so that's probably something I'll try and replicate as well. So I'm going to press P to get my pen tool out, draw some tears into the bottom here, and we'll color them. And also notice there's a good amount of variation in the color throughout, and that's probably something that would be pretty hard to capture in Illustrator. So probably what I'm going to do, I'm going to fake this, and I'm going to just get a really slight gradient. Oh no! Sorry. Select just this. Gradient tool. Here. Okay. Let's try and figure out what colors we want. So here we'll have something like that yellow that we had before. Oh, I probably want something a bit richer. Down here, no, not natural orange. Down here, I'll do something much oranger. So I'm starting to lose some of the visibility on this icon here. And this is really important for the player to read because I'm intending for this to be how they differentiate what the different magics are. So what I'm going to do to try and fix this is, first off, I'm going to look and see if there's anything I can do in the gradient that's going on here to make this a bit better. If I double click, if I click the gradient tool while I have this object selected, the gradient tool. Okay, I guess double clicking it lets me see it. Okay, so we see this is white on this end, and that's probably not what I want. Probably want this to be red, and then I probably want to go over to properties. I'm going to adjust my opacity. Okay, that's a good bit better. Zoom out. That reads a bit better, and now we'll try and do the same on the outside, and then we'll also try and fix these glow. Okay, so actually I'll fix the glow now. So I'm going to select this cube, and I'm going to click over here on FX for this outer glow, and let's try and see the different options that we have. Clear burn, dark difference. Nope. Okay, I thought the color burn, or perhaps was it darken? Okay, color burn gets me a little bit more contrast. That's pretty good. That's a lot more of what I want. So I'll do the same over here. I'll select this. I'll edit. Ooh, no, not the gradient. Glow. And we'll make this also a color burn. Okay, if I zoom out, this is probably good enough. That is much more visible. Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to finish up with these scuff marks here at the bottom. I'll probably have a third one here just to have a bit of symmetry going on. I'll select all of these, and I'm going to probably pick, let's see, ooh, no, I don't want any strokes. I want to use swatches, so it's just a single color, because I accidentally put a gradient on it. Head back. So this might not look too great in game. It does look a little bit weird because these are going off the edge. So I could probably preview what it would look like if we were actually to use the texture by using the Pathfinder tool again to chop off the ends. Okay. This. space. Anyway. We'll see. Okay, I'm going to lock this object while it's on top, which is Control 2, and then that'll let me select what is hidden underneath. I can press Control X and then Control V to paste it in place. Okay. You know, the more that I'm looking at it, the more I'm really not liking what's going on down here. I can try and make it a bit better if I maybe make these markings a bit bigger. I don't know. Maybe this just isn't going to work for us. We'll see. I'll bring it over to game. Maybe it'll look better than I'm thinking that it will. Right now, I'm not buying this. Let's see if adjusting the color helps at all. Okay, that maybe helped a little. I think it might also be that it's too clean elsewhere. So, we'll do File, Export. I'm probably going to have to get rid of that, but we'll see if we can get away with it. Place, come back here, open up our texture again. Actually, I do kind of think it's okay. Though, I will say that I think I probably need to add more to the other sides. So I'll go ahead and do that now. And use the pen tool. Let's try that again. I'm not going to cut it off this time, which makes it look a little weird here, but we'll see how it looks in game. Not great, not terrible, but I think I'm going to leave it for now and probably revisit it later. Maybe I'll decide that I do want a different texture on there. Okay.